Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever stopped to truly look at a plant? I mean, they often seem so simple, just kind of there, right?
Hmm.
Yet right in our gardens, our homes, these seemingly passive beings are, well, they're performing these astonishing feats.
Absolutely. It's easy to overlook.
Yeah, like creating their own food, pulling water hundreds of feet up against gravity, even getting ready for winter with some like incredible biochemical precision. It's wild.
It really is.
So today we're pulling back the curtain on these incredible, often invisible processes that make plants thrive. We're drawing from a really fascinating chapter of Brian Capon's Botany for Gardeners.
A great resource.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And our mission here is to pull out the most important insights for you. We want to connect that tiny molecular world of plants to the actual growth, the flowering, the survival strategies you see every single day.
Hopefully leading to some real aha moments.
Exactly. And some practical takeaways, too, for any gardener or, just anyone curious about the green world around them.
It's truly remarkable, isn't it? Plants are, well, they're masters of self-sufficiency. We call them autotrophic.
Meaning self-nourishing.
Right. Precisely. Unlike us, we're heterotrophic. We have to eat other things. Plants have remarkably simple demands, fundamentally.
Like what?
Just water, minerals from the soil, carbon dioxide from the air, and light. That's pretty much it.
Wow. Simple ingredients for complex life.
And with those basics, they kick off what's arguably the single most important process on Earth,
Huh.
photosynthesis. Plants are the essential go-betweens, you see, converting sunlight into energy that fuels almost all other life.
Okay, so it all starts with water. And the journey that water takes from the soil up to the topmost leaves, it's like engineering genius.
It really is.
The very first step, right there at the roots, involves a process called osmosis. Maybe you can break that down.
Sure. So imagine water molecules. They're always trying to equalize their concentration across membranes. In most soils, you've got lots of water with just a few dissolved salts. But inside the root cells, there's a higher concentration of salts and sugars. So water naturally moves from the soil, where it's more concentrated, into those root cells to try and dilute what's inside.
The great equalizer, like I said.
Exactly. And this works because the cell membranes are selectively permeable. Think of them like a very specific filter.
Letting water in, but not letting the stuff inside out.
Pretty much, yeah. They let water move freely inward, but largely block most dissolved substances inside the cell from getting out. That selective movement is what makes osmosis such an effective, constant water pump for the plant.
So water moves in, then what happens inside the cell?
Well, it typically gets stored in a big central compartment called the vacuole. As this vacuole fills up, it expands,
Pushing outwards, right?
pushing the cell's internal contents, the cytoplasm, against the rigid cell wall. This makes the cell turgid, fully inflated.
Ah, okay. You gave a great analogy in the book, like a bicycle tire.
Exactly. The inflated inner tube, that's the vacuole, pressing against the inelastic sidewall, the cell wall. That gives the tire its firmness.
So a crisp lettuce leaf that's full of turgid cells.
Precisely. And a wilted one. Those cells have lost that internal water pressure. They've gone flaccid.
Okay, I can picture that.
Now, if cells lose too much water, their vacuoles shrink right down, and the cytoplasm actually pulls away from the cell walls. That condition is called plasmolysis.
And that's bad news for the cell.
Very bad. If it continues, the cell will die. But here's where nature's adaptations are truly remarkable. Think about plants in really salty places.
Like near the ocean or salt flats.
Exactly. Seaweeds, certain desert plants, they can actually store even higher salt concentrations inside their cells than what's in the salty water or soil around them.
Wow, really? How does that help?
It means they can still draw water in via osmosis, even in those incredibly harsh conditions. It allows them to survive where most other plants would just shrivel up and die.
Incredible adaptation. So osmosis gets water into the root cells, but how does it get up the plant? Sometimes way, way up.
Good question. Near the root tips, you have these tiny epidermal cells and root hairs constantly drawing water in by osmosis. As these cells get turgid, they create a gentle push.
Pushing water inwards.
Yes, into spaces between other root cells. Then there's a special layer, the endodermis, which acts like a second osmotic pump, directing that water into the hollow tube-like cells of the xylem, right at the root center.
Xylem, those are the plant's water pipes, basically.
That's a good way to think of it. This collective push from all those root cells creates a slight upward force. We call it root pressure.
And you can actually see this sometimes, right?
You can. Have you ever noticed tiny droplets of water right on the tips or edges of leaves, especially early in the budding?
Yeah, I think I have.
That's guttation. It's root pressure pushing excess water and dissolved salts out.
Fascinating. But you said root pressure is slight. It can't push water up a giant redwood, can it?
No, absolutely not. While root pressure works for low-growing plants, it's nowhere near strong enough for tall trees. To achieve that amazing feat, a much more powerful force takes over. Transpirational pull.
Okay, transpirational pull. Sounds important.
It is. Think of it like water being sucked up through the plant like a giant continuous soda straw.
Okay. How does that work?
Inside the leaves, cells draw water out of the xylem. Then, the sun's heat evaporates that water, turning it into vapor. This vapor escapes through tiny pores on the leaf surface, the stomata. That whole process is transpiration.
So water evaporating from the leaves pulls more water up.
Exactly. The loss of water vapor creates a powerful suction. And water molecules, they have this property called cohesion. They like to stick together. So they form these unbroken chains all the way up through the interconnected xylem network, roots, stems, leaves. That pulling force, the transpiration, is felt right down to the roots.
And the amount of water moved is staggering, right?
Oh, absolutely. Take a 48-foot silver maple tree. On a warm day, it can transpire something like 58 gallons of water per hour.
58 gallons an hour? That seems almost wasteful.
It might seem that way, but transpiration is crucial. It's not just about moving water. It's the primary way plants lift vast quantities of water against gravity, sure, but it's also how they transport vital minerals dissolved in that water from the soil up to the leaves and growing points.
Ah, so it's a delivery system too.
A very effective one. And there's another key benefit: cooling. Just like perspiration evaporating from our skin cools us, water evaporating from leaves provides a significant cooling effect, protecting them from overheating in direct sun.
Okay, that makes sense. But plants aren't just losing water uncontrollably, are they? They can manage it.
Definitely. They have excellent control. They can rapidly close those stomata pores, especially if the roots aren't keeping up with water absorption.
Smart.
And many species have evolved amazing adaptations, things like fuzzy or hairy leaves or stomata hidden away in little pits or sunken areas, all to cut down on water loss.
Which leads to a practical tip for gardeners, right? About transplanting and cut flowers.
Yes, absolutely. When you uproot a plant or cut a stem, you break that continuous water column in the xylem. Air can get sucked in and block things up.
Which causes wilting.
Right. So always water a plant really well immediately after transplanting. Help it reestablish that flow. And for cut flowers, cut the stems longer than you need initially.
Okay.
Then recut them to the final length while holding the stems underwater. This stops air getting into the xylem, keeps the water flowing, and helps your blossoms last much longer.
Great tip. Okay, moving from daily water needs to surviving the seasons. Let's talk about cold hardening. How do plants survive freezing temperatures?
That's another fascinating adaptation, especially for plants in colder climates. When deciduous leaves drop, water movement slows right down. If water inside the cells freezes, it expands.
And bursts the cell.
It can rupture the delicate cell membranes, which is usually fatal. So plants prepare through cold hardening. Part of this involves accumulating sugars within their cells.
So like a natural antifreeze?
Exactly. It lowers the freezing point. But there's another clever part. Their cell membranes change permeability. They actually allow some water to leak out into the spaces between the cells.
So ice forms outside the cell, not inside.
Precisely. If ice crystals form, they form in those intercellular spaces, which doesn't harm the vital internal machinery of the cell. It's a really elegant survival strategy.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Gardeners know all about feeding plants, right? Fertilizers, compost. But what are plants actually eating from the soil?
Well, fundamentally, whether it's from organic sources like compost or manure, or from inorganic commercial fertilizers, plants are after the same essential mineral elements.
How they get them is different, though.
Right. Organic matter decomposes slowly, releasing minerals gradually. Inorganic fertilizers provide specific elements in a more concentrated, readily available form. Plant scientists group these minerals into two categories based on how much the plant needs.
Macronutrients and micronutrients.
Exactly. Macronutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur are needed in relatively large quantities. Then you have micronutrients: iron, copper, zinc, manganese, molybdenum, boron needed in much smaller trace amounts.
Where do these all come from originally?
Well, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen come mostly from air and water,
Yeah.
but all the others, they ultimately originate from the weathering of Earth's rocks, slowly becoming available in the soil.
And this is where it gets really interesting for gardeners, I think. These invisible elements have huge jobs, and if they're missing, the plant actually shows symptoms, right?
They certainly do. These are deficiency symptoms. For instance, probably the most common one gardeners see is yellowing leaves. That's called chlorophyll.
What causes that?
Often it's a lack of magnesium or iron. Magnesium is actually part of the chlorophyll molecule, the green pigment, and iron is essential for the process of making chlorophyll. So, without enough of either, the plant can't produce enough green pigment, and the leaves look pale or yellow.
What about other key nutrients, like nitrogen?
Nitrogen deficiency also causes chlorosis, plus stunted growth. Nitrogen is crucial. It's in chlorophyll, amino acids, proteins, even DNA. Really fundamental.
And calcium. You mentioned that's like cell wall glue.
Yes, it's vital for pectin, which holds cell walls together. A calcium shortage can cause rapid death or necrosis, especially at growing tips, stems, roots, young leaves. Others like potassium, copper, zinc, manganese are important enzyme activators. Their deficiencies might cause more subtle symptoms.
But it's not always straightforward diagnosing these, is it?
No, definitely not. You have to be careful. Deficiency symptoms can easily be confused with other issues, overwatering, underwatering, disease, even air pollution effects. It's a clue, but not always the whole story.
So these minerals get used by the plant. How do they get back into the cycle, back into the soil?
Through decay, mostly. When leaves, branches, or whole plants die and decompose, those minerals are released back into the soil. Interestingly, plants are quite good at recycling internally, too. Before deciduous trees drop their leaves in autumn, they actually pull some valuable mobile nutrients like nitrogen, potassium, magnesium out of those aging leaves and move them to storage tissues or growing tips for reuse next season.
Ah, so that yellowing leaf might still be useful to the plant for a bit.
Exactly. That's why gardeners can actually help their plants conserve nutrients by maybe waiting a few days before removing those discolored older leaves. Give the plant time to salvage what it can.
Good practical tip. And a plant's needs change over its life, don't they? That's why fertilizer bags have those numbers. NPK.
Precisely. Nitrogen N is key for leafy vegetative growth. So young plants, or things like lawns, need more nitrogen. Phosphorus P and potassium K become more important for flowering and fruiting.
So the NPK ratio tells you the balance.
Right. Those three numbers represent the percentage by weight of nitrogen, phosphate P2O5, and potash K2O. So a high-end lawn fertilizer might be 25-5. Something to promote blooms might be low nitrogen, higher P and K, like 0-10-10, or maybe 5-10-5 for general purpose. Root crops might like something like 2-12-10. It reflects the plant's needs at different stages. Okay, that makes sense. Now, beyond the nutrients, the soil itself is crucial. What makes up good soil? Soil is this incredibly complex mix. You've got the inorganic bits derived from a weathered rock, sand, silt, and clay, which are defined by their particle size. And then you have the organic matter humus, which is decomposed plant and animal material.
And the mix affects how it holds water, right?
Absolutely. Particle size and the amount of humus determine the soil's water-holding capacity.
So if you picture sand, water just runs straight through, doesn't it?
Pretty much, yes. Large particles, large spaces between them. But humus, that dark organic stuff, acts like a sponge. It holds moisture in tiny capillary spaces, making it readily available for roots. That's why adding compost is so good for almost any soil.
What about clay? Clay soil gets a bad rap sometimes.
It can be challenging. Clay particles are tiny and have electrical charges. They can hold on to water molecules so tightly that it's actually difficult for roots to pull that water away. It's there, but not available. Plus, dense clay often lacks good porosity. There aren't enough air spaces, and roots need oxygen to function. So clay soils can easily become waterlogged, drowning the roots. That's why loams mixtures of sand, silt, and clay, often with good organic matter, are usually considered ideal. Good drainage and good water retention.
Another critical factor is soil pH, right? Acidity and alkalinity.
Hugely important. The pH scale goes from 1, very acidic, to 14, very alkaline, with 7 being neutral. Most garden plants do best in soils that are slightly acidic to neutral, maybe pH 6.0 to 7.0.
But some plants are picky.
Oh, yes. Some, like blueberries, azaleas, rhododendrons, ferns, they need acidic soil, maybe pH 4.5 to 5.5. Others, like asparagus or some cacti, prefer slightly alkaline conditions, maybe up to 7.5.
And the classic example is the hydrangea flower color, isn't it?
Perfect example. Blue flowers in acidic soil, pink flowers in alkaline soil. The pH directly affects the availability of aluminum, which influences the pigment.
And gardeners can adjust pH.
To an extent. You can add sulfur or acidic organic matter like peat moss to lower pH, make it more acidic, or add limestone, calcium carbonate to raise pH, make it more alkaline.
What about wider environmental issues? Acid rain.
Acid rain is a serious problem. It forms when pollutants like sulfur dioxide mix with atmospheric moisture. It acidifies soils and water bodies. This increased acidity can actually release toxic metals like aluminum, which are normally locked up harmlessly in the soil minerals.
And that harms plants.
Yes, it interferes with nutrient uptake and can directly poison them. On the other end, very alkaline soils also cause problems. Nutrients like phosphorus and iron can become locked up, chemically bound, and unavailable to plants, even if they're physically present in the soil.
Is there a fix for that, like the iron issue?
For iron in alkaline soils, gardeners often use chelated iron. The iron is bound to a special organic molecule, like EDTA or EDDHA, which keeps it soluble and available for the plant roots to absorb, even in high pH conditions.
Okay, we've covered water and nutrients, but the real magic, the energy source, is the sun. And this happens inside tiny structures, chloroplasts.
That's right. Chloroplasts are the powerhouses. If you could zoom right in, you'd see these intricate little organelles inside plant cells. They have outer membranes and then complex internal membrane systems.
Like stacks of things.
Exactly. Stacks of short membranes called grana. And it's within these grana membranes that the chlorophyll and other light-capturing pigments are concentrated.
Chlorophyll is the green one, but there are others.
Yes. The main ones are the green chlorophylls, A and B, which primarily absorb red and blue light. But there are also accessory pigments, orange-yellow carotenes and yellow xanthophylls. They absorb different wavelengths, mostly in the blue-green range, and pass that energy along to chlorophyll.
And that's why leaves change color in the fall.
Precisely. In autumn, as the chlorophyll breaks down and disappears, the underlying orange and yellow pigments, the carotenes and xanthophylls, which were there all along, become visible.
Sometimes you get reds and purples, too.
Yes. Those are usually due to another type of pigment called anthocyanins, which are produced actively in the fall in some species, often triggered by cool temperatures and bright light.
So these pigments capture light energy. But the plant can't just store light, can it?
No, light energy itself is fleeting. What plants do during photosynthesis is channel that absorbed light energy into making chemical bonds within food molecules.
Sugars, starches.
Carbohydrates like sugars and starch, yes, but also fats and proteins eventually. This conversion of abundant sunlight into stable, energy-rich chemical bonds in food is the unique, essential trick of plants.
And then to use that energy, there's another process, respiration.
Exactly. Cellular respiration. This isn't unique to plants. Pretty much all living things do it, including us. It happens in different organelles called mitochondria.
And it's basically the reverse of photosynthesis, using the food.
In a way, respiration breaks down those food molecules, releasing the chemical energy stored in their bonds. That released energy then powers everything the cell needs to do, growth, repair, transporting substances, you name it.
So plants make the food via photosynthesis, then break it down for energy via respiration. Both are vital.
Absolutely. Plants are both the producers and the consumers of their own energy stores, ultimately derived from sunlight.
So photosynthesis itself, it happens in stages, right?
Yes, broadly two main stages. First is the light-dependent reaction or just light reaction. And it is incredibly fast.
Like how fast?
Fractions of a second. In this stage, the pigments capture light energy and funnel it to a special chlorophyll molecule. This boosts electrons in the chlorophyll to a high energy level. That energy is then captured and stored in special energy-carrying molecules.
What happens to the chlorophyll that lost electrons?
Ah, good point. To replace those lost electrons, the chlorophyll actually splits water molecules H2O. This releases electrons, hydrogen ions, protons, and crucially, oxygen gas, O2, which escapes into the atmosphere.
That's where our atmospheric oxygen comes from.
Primarily, yes.
Yeah.
It's a byproduct of plants splitting water to get electrons for photosynthesis.
Incredible. So that's the fast light reaction. What's next?
Next comes the light-independent reaction, sometimes called the Calvin cycle, or carbon fixation. This stage is slower and doesn't directly need light, though it needs the products of the light reaction.
Okay. What happens here?
Here, atmospheric carbon dioxide, CO2, is captured and combined with an existing sugar molecule inside the chloroplast. Then, using the energy and hydrogen generated during the light reactions, this initial product is converted into simple sugars, like PGAL. These small sugars are the building blocks.
Building blocks for what?
For making more complex sugars like glucose and fructose, and ultimately for building everything else the plant needs: starch for storage, cellulose for cell walls, even amino acids and fatty acids eventually.
And you mentioned an adaptation for desert plants here.
Yes. Some desert succulents, like cacti, have a neat trick called cam photosynthesis. To conserve water, they only open their stomata at night, when it's cooler and less water will evaporate.
So they take in CO2 at night.
Exactly. They take in CO2 at night and store it temporarily as an acid. Then, during the day, they close their stomata to prevent water loss, but they can release that stored CO2 internally to run the Calvin cycle using sunlight captured by the light reactions. Very clever way to save water.
Very clever indeed. So the main products are sugars, leading to starch and cellulose.
Right. Glucose and fructose are simple sugars. Sucrose, common table sugar, is often how a sugar is transported around the plant. Link thousands of glucose units together, and you get starch, the main way plants store energy long term. Link them differently, and you get cellulose, the tough structural component of cell walls. Starch is easily broken down for energy. Cellulose generally isn't.
So looking at the bigger picture, photosynthesis releases oxygen and uses CO2. Respiration uses oxygen and releases CO2.
Correct. There are complementary processes in terms of gas exchange with the atmosphere. Most respiration is aerobic, meaning it requires oxygen.
Like us breathing.
Exactly. Though some organisms, and even plant tissues under certain conditions like waterlogging, can perform anaerobic respiration without oxygen, like yeast fermentation, making bread rise or producing alcohol that's anaerobic respiration.
And this balance is crucial for the planet.
Absolutely essential. Photosynthesis constantly replenishes the atmospheric oxygen that's consumed not only by respiration but also by combustion-burning fuels and even slow oxidation, like rusting.
Which brings us to a really big thought about fossil fuels and climate.
Yes. The current hypothesis is that over millions of years, ancient photosynthesizing organisms, mostly algae and early plants, took vast amounts of CO2 out of the atmosphere.
Locking it up in their bodies.
Right. And when they died, under certain conditions, their remains weren't fully decomposed but were transformed into coal, oil, and natural gas, fossil fuels, effectively locking away huge stores of carbon that was once atmospheric CO2. Now, by burning these fossil fuels at an incredible rate, we are rapidly releasing that ancient carbon back into the atmosphere as CO2.
Undoing millions of years of natural carbon sequestration.
In effect, yes. And the concern is that this rapid increase in atmospheric CO2 acts like a blanket, trapping more of the sun's heat, the greenhouse effect, potentially leading to significant global climate change.
And deforestation makes this worse.
It certainly doesn't help. Reducing the planet's plant cover, especially large forests, which are huge carbon sinks, reduces the capacity for photosynthesis to draw down some of that excess CO2. It runs counter to natural cycles.
So, reflecting on all this, what's the bottom line for us?
The bottom line is that photosynthesis paved the way for complex life on Earth as we know it. As humans, we are profoundly dependent on plants and their photosynthetic activity for the food we eat, the materials for clothing and shelter, the oxygen we breathe, and even the energy that powers much of our modern civilization via fossil fuels. We owe them a huge debt.
Okay, let's shift to reproduction. When you think about a flower, you probably just see its beauty, right? But you mentioned earlier if you could see, it's super magnified.
Oh, the details are astonishing. With powerful microscopes like scanning electron microscopes or SEMs, we get these incredible three-dimensional views.
What kind of things can you see?
Well, take pollen grains. To us, they look like fine dust. But under SEM, they're revealed as these intricate sculptural masterpieces. Each plant species has pollen with unique shapes, patterns, textures on its durable outer wall. It's breathtaking.
Wow.
Or consider diatoms, tiny single-celled algae, incredibly abundant in oceans and lakes. Their cell walls are made of silica, essentially glass, and they come in an unbelievable diversity of ornate forms like tiny, exquisite jewel boxes.
It makes you wonder how they make these things.
It really does. How does a complex flowering plant construct such perfectly detailed pollen grains inside its tiny anthers? How does a single-cell diatom build such an intricate silica shell around itself? These are still areas of active wonder and research.
And it makes you rethink the flower itself. You said a botanist's definition is pretty blunt.
Yes. To a botanist, a flower is, quite simply, a shoot, modified for reproduction. The beauty, the color, the fragrance, from a purely functional perspective, they'd argue that's largely coincidental to the main job.
Coincidental, or maybe strategic.
Well, strategic in the sense that they act as clever lures, as the book puts it. They're ostentatiously advertising their presence.
Advertising for pollinators.
Exactly. Bright colors, specific shapes, enticing aromas with their sweet scents for bees and butterflies, or even putrid odors to attract flies that normally go for decaying matter. The petals often form convenient landing platforms.
So the insect comes for a nectar reward.
And in the process, probing for that reward, it unintentionally picks up pollen or deposits pollen from another flower, becoming an unwitting assistant in the plant's sexual reproduction.
But not all flowers are showy like that.
No, many plants, like grasses, oaks, conifers, have very inconspicuous flowers. They don't need to attract insects because they rely on wind for pollination.
Less energy cost for the plant, I guess.
Probably. But regardless of the method, insect, wind, water, the fundamental purpose of the flower, or the reproductive structure, is the same, ensuring that life and the genetic instructions encoded within it get passed on to the next generation.
And plants have different types of reproductive cells, spores and gametes.
That's right. Simpler plants like ferns, mosses, fungi, they often produce spores. These are typically tiny, single-celled structures, often dust-like. Under the right conditions, a single spore can germinate and grow directly into a new plant through cell division.
Okay, so spores grow directly. What about gametes?
Gametes are the sex cells involved in sexual reproduction. Think sperm and eggs. This process is generally more complex. Gametes, unlike spores, usually cannot develop directly into a new organism on their own.
They have to fuse.
Correct. A male gamete, sperm, must unite with a female gamete in a process called fertilization. This fusion creates a single cell called a zygote. That zygote then develops, through many cell divisions, into the new multicellular organism, the embryo.
And getting the sperm to the egg was a big challenge evolutionarily.
A huge challenge, especially for land plants. Early plants, like mosses and ferns, still rely on water rain or dew for the sperm to swim to the egg. But more evolutionarily advanced plants, like conifers, gymnosperms, and flowering plants, angiosperms, solve this problem differently.
With pollen.
With pollen, yes. Pollen grains carry the male gametes, and they evolved ways to deliver them close to the egg, often via wind or animals. Then they grow a pollen tube, a liquid-filled extension that carries the sperm directly to the egg, eliminating the need for external water for fertilization. A major evolutionary breakthrough.
And this led to the evolution of seeds instead of just spores for dispersal.
Yes. In gymnosperms and angiosperms, the seed largely replaced the spore as the main unit for dispersal and starting the next generation.
What's the advantage of a seed over a spore?
Both can often survive harsh conditions like drying out. But the seed has a huge head start. It contains not just the potential for a new plant, but a rudimentary plant, already the embryo.
Already partly developed.
Exactly. Plus, the seed usually contains stored food reserves, endosperm or cotyledons. This means when the seed germinates, the young seedling has its own packed lunch, reducing its immediate dependence on finding external food and nutrients. It gives it a much better chance of establishment compared to a tiny spore starting from scratch.
It really highlights nature's ingenuity, finding ways to continue life.
It does. It leads to what the author calls nature's great paradox.
Great shift.
That individual lives are finite. Whether it's an ancient bristlecone pine living for millennia or an ephemeral flower lasting just a day, every individual eventually dies. Yet these transient individuals are the vehicles chosen by nature to carry life forward, perpetuating genetic instructions through vast stretches of time, eons even.
That's a really profound thought to end on. Wow. We've covered a lot. We journeyed from those tiny cellular processes, how plants drink and eat, essentially,
Osmosis, nutrient uptake,
right up to the massive global impacts of photosynthesis and respiration, the carbon cycle.
and how plants reproduce, the cleverness of flowers and seeds.
And understanding these sort of invisible aspects of plant life, it really does more than just boost your science knowledge, doesn't it? It genuinely enhances your practical gardening skills, I think, and just your overall appreciation for the green world.
Absolutely. Knowing how plants actually grow, how they adapt, how they interact with soil and water and light, it makes you a much more informed observer and hopefully a better caretaker of the plants in your life, whether it's a garden, a farm, or just a houseplant.
Definitely. So here's a final thought for you to ponder. Just consider that pretty much every breath you take, replenishing oxygen, every bite of food you eat, providing energy, the clothes you wear, the wood in your home, it's all ultimately a direct result of these incredible, often hidden biological mechanisms happening inside plants all around us all the time.
It connects us all.
It really does. Keep digging, keep learning, and keep appreciating the truly astonishing world of plant life.